And so today I'm talking about how we can understand the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh. And the origin of this, the reason why I chose this region to study is that back in September of 2023, President Ilham Aliyev announced an anti-terrorism operation within the region of Nagorno-Karabakh. And in a few short days, he was able to fully incorporate the region into Azerbaijan proper. And so it was this event that really brought me to my thesis, and my thesis can be summed up in 3 points, that being that the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh has allowed the West, especially the United States, to expand its influence within the country of Armenia as it pursues closer ties to the West. Additionally, I find that Russian influence in the Caucuses has fallen tremendously, and that finally Azerbaijan can now be considered a regional wildcard in geopolitics. But in order to fully understand the thesis and to get to where we are now, we kind of have to go back in time, and we'll go back to around the Soviet Union. And so the borders of the Soviet Union that you see in this map are insanely complicated. This was because Joseph Stalin at the time pursued a policy of divide and conquer. And if you divide your enemies so much, they can't rise up against you. And so you'll see Azerbaijan in green and Armenia in purple. And within Azerbaijan, you'll see Nagorno-Karabakh as autonomous oblast. That's sort of a special county, if you put in the US. And Azerbaijan and Armenia are SSRs, which stand for Soviet Socialist Republics. And that's sort of like states. But when you compare states like North Carolina and Virginia, they're sort of similar. But for these states, Armenia and Azerbaijan, they're wildly different. These are two distinct peoples, two distinct religions and cultures and thought processes, and almost everything else is different between these two states. And so as the Soviet Union was falling apart in 1991 and Azerbaijan declared independence, this is what the map was supposed to look like, with Nagorno-Karabakh highlighted. However, what happened was something like this. The Republic of Artsakh rose up and declared its independence from Azerbaijan. The reasoning is because Nagorno-Karabakh is an ethnically Armenian land. Joseph Stalin redrew the borders and incorporated this ethnic Armenian land into Azerbaijan to placate the Azerbaijanis into joining the Soviet Union and to keep the Armenians weak. And so a 95% ethnically homogenous land did not want to be under Azerbaijani control. And so Azerbaijan and the Republic of Artsakh would fight from 1988 to 94 and would only end after Russia brokered a ceasefire. However, this would still anger the Azeri government immensely, as over 20% of their territory was lost as a result of this. That's about taking the size of Texas and multiplying it by 3. That's equivalent to 20% of the US. So an immense amount of land was lost. And so the Republic of Artsakh would act as an extension of Armenia, allowing it to control the regional politics of the Caucasus and to keep Azerbaijan on the edge. However, Azerbaijan had one thing that Armenia doesn't, and that's vast quantities of natural gas and oil. In this map, you'll see the pipelines. These are only a few. There's more pipelines that Azerbaijan has going to other European countries. And you notice that these pipelines go around Armenia and around the Republic of Artsakh because they didn't want to cut Armenia in on the deal of getting oil. And it's because of this, it is because of the lack of oil that Armenia had and the vast quantities of it that Azerbaijan had, that Azerbaijan was able to grow its GDP tremendously compared to Armenia. And as you see over time, as the Armenian economy stagnated and grew slowly, Azerbaijan was able to exponentially grow at the rates at which we only see in countries such as the UAE or Saudi Arabia. And so it is this growth that Azerbaijan had that they were able to remilitarize their forces and to prepare itself for their upcoming offensive. And that happened in September of 2020 to November of 2020. And during this time, the world was pretty distracted. We had about 2 spikes in COVID and a contentious presidential election. And it's during that time that Azerbaijan knew that the world would not care, but they wouldn't fully notice what was going on. And so on this map, highlighted in teal in the south, that's the region that Azerbaijan took from the Republic of Artsakh during the conflict. In green That's what happened after the peace treaty. And so there's a thin purple strip, that's a Lachin corridor, and that's upheld by Russian peacekeepers because Russia stepped in and stopped the conflict. During this time, Vladimir Putin sat both the Azeri president and the Armenian prime minister down, and he threatened the Azerbaijani president. He told him to stop and to keep stability in the Caucasus, or Russia would have to personally intervene on their behalf. And that peace lasted for about 2 years. As with the world distracted again, Azerbaijan struck again, this time bombing Armenian military positions. And this happened because Azerbaijan knew that Russia wouldn't be able to do anything because they were too focused on the war in Ukraine. And so this happened in September 2022, and this was done to weaken Armenia's power projection within the Nagorno-Karabakh should Azerbaijan come in. But it doesn't end there, because there's a Russian flag right there. That meant that Russian peacekeepers, Russian military forces were also bombed by Azerbaijan during this time. And so, rightfully so, Armenia protested and applied the CSTO, which is Russia's version of NATO, for help, because they were attacked by a non-CSTO member. However, Russia refused because they were too focused on the war in Ukraine to really step in. And so it is after this event in September 2022 where we come to September of 2023, where Azerbaijan came back in and fully retook the Nagorno-Karabakh, the result of which was over 100,000 ethnic Armenians were essentially forced to leave their lands. They chose to leave their lands in threat of what could happen. And so they went to Armenia for safe haven. But it doesn't just end there, because Azerbaijan still has designs on Armenia, where if you look at the south of Armenia, you'll see that there's a long, narrow strip that Armenia owns, and you'll also see that Azerbaijan is cut into two, with Nakhchivan as a separate province. That region is called the Zangezur Corridor, and Azerbaijan wants to connect itself as one united country. And so it's because of this that Armenia feels threatened, and they know that Russia won't help them, that they're now pursuing ties with the West. And that came in the form of shopping, where France has agreed to sell military weapons, and India has agreed to sell military weapons to Armenia. But it doesn't end there, because so too has Azerbaijan been shopping as well, where they applied to Israel for weapons, and they applied to Turkey for weapons. The reasoning is because Israel finds Azerbaijan as a proper buffer against Iran and their current conflict in the Middle East. Turkey is a Turkish nation, and so too is Azerbaijan. And so seeing each other as the same peoples, President Erdogan in Turkey has agreed to help Azerbaijan. And so with this, you can see the dominoes are kind of being set up into place. But it doesn't end there, because just a few days ago, Russia announced that they're withdrawing their peacekeeping forces from Nagorno-Karabakh. Essentially, they were kicked out by Azerbaijan, who had enough of Russia being there, and they knew that the initiative was on their side. And so with this, the stage is more or less set for these two countries to almost duke it out and fight each other. And so that's where I come to my key takeaways. And I come up with three of them. The first being that with Russia out of the Caucasus, Armenia is now looking for a new protector because they know that they can't defend themselves on their own. That, namely, is the West or in the United States. I secondly find that with another war imminent, Azerbaijan is going to look for another distraction in the world to strike. We currently have three of them. We have another US presidential election coming up. We have war in Ukraine still, and we have conflict in the Middle East again, with the threat of it growing wider after what we saw last night in Iran. And so with these three conflicts going on around the world, with these two conflicts and the presidential election going on, the world is distracted in many forms, and they're not paying attention to what's going on in the Caucasus. And so I finally find that another theater in geopolitics has opened up and is allowing more tension to be created between the two superpowers, the United States and Russia, as the United States seeks to take another Soviet satellite state from its orbit, and that Azerbaijan asserts its independence and its control over the Caucasus. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.